Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video for Exotic Car Hacks. And today we're going to be looking at a very detailed concept, actually more than I wanted to share here in this video, but my team actually asked me to do so for you. And so today we're going to look at what does it take to actually buy your first exotic car step by step, how to actually do it. Now, you know, in Exotic Car Hacks, we describe in depth how to select the right cars, how to make sure you're actually hacking a car and going through that process of understanding which cars are hackable, what mileage points, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about the process itself, like what does it entail, how does it work, and what should you be doing today if you're going to be buying your very first exotic car. And so we're going to take a look at that and really perhaps use maybe a car such as an Audi R8, a very popular and simple car in the concept of Exotic Car Hacks that has been hacked thousands of times by our members that perhaps can use here as an example. So we're going to talk about the R8 specifically, or should I say the Gallardo platform R8, right? Both of which are fine. So one of the things I want to point out here again is that, you know, in order to execute this model incredibly well, you're going to have to understand that there's a little bit more detail that goes into it. However, today you'll have a very good infrastructure on what you need to do. So the first part of buying your exotic car is what I call your buying power. This is something that a lot of people ignore. In the general term of purchasing a car, most people assume that the first step should be buying the actual car or finding the car to buy. But really, finding a car without the opportunity to buy it means that you're basically dead in the water. So the first thing you're going to do if you're looking for an exotic car is actually understand what is your buying power. Now, buying power is basically twofold, either cash or finance, and it's done by either being cash and finance or cash or finance. So what does that mean? Well, buying power comes from how much money or how much car can you afford, not how much monthly payment can you afford. And there's a big difference. When you're thinking about buying power, typically you think about how much monthly can I afford? I'm comfortable giving $700 a month for a car, so what should I buy? But instead you should be asking yourself, what will the bank be willing to lend me? Because we're not talking about buying a normal car like a Honda or a Jetta where the bank is most likely to favor you. We're talking about buying a luxury car, which will require you to actually prove to the bank that you have enough funds and capacity to repay what we call a leisure buy. And so in most cases, banks will finance between 80 to 90% of NADA values. But remember that today, in the market we're in, a lot of cars are being sold for significantly over retail NADA, which will put you in a position of needing more cash, specifically than finance. So the first step is to actually get pre-approved by either credit unions or banks, okay? So this is step one, which is basically the buying power and what we call the pre-approval. You usually reach out to a bank and you file a pre-approval for a car and you have an idea in mind. So let's say in this case you wanted an R8. You would look and say, I'd like to get approved for somewhere around 170 to 180K, and the bank would then respond to you based on what they could get you or not. There are different types of pre-approvals, and buying power goes much further than just saying I got pre-approved by Bank of America, for example. The reality is that not all pre-approvals are equal. A lot of banks have stipulations. If you get approved here, you can only buy from our link, you can only buy from these dealers, you can only buy this way, your titles have to be that way, and so it basically narrows down the pool of cars available to you. And so it's not always beneficial to get a pre-approval from one place or another. Let's say, for example, you got a credit union pre-approval that was pretty relaxed and free, as found in the resources page of Exotic Car Hacks, where we break down the entire list of lenders that are exotic car friendly and the best opportunities. That's under our resource tab for our members that are watching this. But let's say you did that. Let's say you got the pre-approval at one of these credit unions or lending institutions, and it was good. They would usually tell you how much. You would know how much cash you need to bring to the table. They would tell you how much you're approved for in financing and would stretch you between 72 to 84 months, or you could even reach out to some other longer term lenders for exotics as described in our resource page that again could stretch you out as much as 144 months. But what matters here is basically the offset of how much cash you need to bring to the table and how much car you'd be approved for. So let's say, for example, you were finance approved based on your income and all these other things that we talked about. You were approved for somewhere around 140,000. And so all that means is that what would occur is that the bank would tell you you're looking to buy a $180,000 car. You'll need to bring $40,000 to the table. But let's assume you only had $20,000 to bring to the table in cash. That means that you would now have $20K, and your buying power combined would only be $160K, which would probably be too far for the R8, and you'd have to look at alternative vehicles that would fit that model, right? So that's the first step, is to understand that, is to understand what is your buying power, what can you actually afford, and then can you go up maybe an extra $10K to reach your goal of having a $170,000 car. So this is step one, the buying power and pre-approval process, so that you know exactly what you can afford. Now, step two is what we call the research phase, right? So the research phase is a little bit more complex because it's not just about applying. And most of you will say, well, your approval is only good for 30 days, so you got to do it quick. But reality is your approval is going to be much more important than just 30 days because it can also be renewed if it's not within 30 days. But the research phase matters because this is the part where you have to kind of understand what cars are on the market and what cars are worth. And there's a couple of ways you can basically figure out the research you need. So you need to know a couple of things. Now, we break this down again in very much detail in the Exotic Car Hacks course on how to do these things. I'm just walking you through the process here. You're going to need to know the trade-in value of a car, because that's going to basically give you the dollar that the dealers are paying, and this is what we call the liquidity index. So you're going to have to know basically what is the liquidity index of that car, so that you're not exposing yourself to too much risk. You're going to also have to know basically what are the basic issues with each car in each year. So this is important too, because this isn't about values. This is really about the quality of what you're going after. So an example would be the 2004 Gallardos were much more problematic than the 2009 to 13, providing a much better alternative 2009-13 for a Gallardo. So meaning you might want to pay more, so you're not caught up in repairs. Part of the issue of buying a wrong car year or a wrong car model is that you're going to be dealing with all the issues that historically come with everything there. And it doesn't always have to be the case, which is why I highly recommend that if we're dealing with the basic issues of a car, we typically pick cars that are going to be less likely to have permanent problems than others, which is where the research comes in. So understanding the models. At Exotic Car Hacks, we help you with the basic issues by providing what we call a buyer's guide of each and every car out there, giving you a very good understanding of what to look for with each car, make, model, year, and so on and so forth. And actually that resource is free for you on the exoticcarhacks.com website, where you can actually search in the toolbar the car you want, and that will give you the buyer's guide for that car completely free. You don't have to be a member for that. You get a more advanced version if you're a member, but if you're not, here you get basically the entire buyer's guide, so you know about the car itself. Now, in addition to that, in the research phase, you also want to basically take what we call a pool of the market. A pool of market is basically understanding what cars are on the market and what is the 20 percentile to the 80 percentile. What we mean by that is looking at the entire value of the market and saying the lowest price car on the market is 100K, the highest price car on the market is 200K. So we look at that and we go, the range of purchase is between 120 and 180K. This is the majority of the place where we're going to focus our attention in the purchasing by then using this tool and then understanding the basic issues through your buyer's guides, the trade-in values, and then making a decision about which exact car, year, make, and model to go after. So this is really important. This is the research phase, right? And the part of the research phase continues, this is important to understand, by having something, I don't know that it's, I don't know that there's a word for it. I'm going to call it here the flexibility of purchase. And what that means is basically once we determine what we want to buy, so let's say, for example, we want to buy a 2017 R8, right? Like, we understand that. Now, the flexibility would be that we are open to also 2018. So there's a gauge, a change of where that goes, but it's important in the research phase for us to research not only our core car, but also alternatives close enough to the car in model year or mileage to give us a broader range of research and find yet the right car that we're looking for. So that's the research phase, which is part two. Now, let's go to, here, wrong one. Okay, now let's go to the third phase. And the third thing we're going to do, once we've done all the buying power, we know what we qualify for, we've done the research and we know what it is, we're going to find the car. And in order to do that, we can do that a couple of ways. We have basic tools available to us like AutoTrader, CarGurus. We also have tools like eBay Motors, DuPont Registry, and so on and so forth. We have a ton of internet search tools, including Facebook, where we can look at all the database and the things that we need to in order to see what's available in the market. And then we're going to now use that to make this pool right here, to pool a market, right? We're doing that in understanding, and we have the flexibility of purchase, so it's giving us the opportunity to understand. This is where we go to find the car. But when we found the car, we can't just accept what it is, so we have to basically use this other strategy called negotiations, which really come after finding the car. Now, typically, one of the strategies for negotiating a car that works really, really well is to find multiple cars you're interested in and basically play the deals against each other until you find the best deal possible. So my piece of advice here is finding the best 3 deals for you and playing them against one another. So 3 deals on the market, and you're basically playing them out one against the other. Like, do you have a car X with X amount of miles and condition and so on and so forth? And then you're going to basically negotiate these 3 deals down, and then you'll have car A, B, and C, and you can really then take a look at what is the better value. Never buy the lowest price, always buy the better value. So sometimes you could have car A be much cheaper but have significantly more miles than car B. By value, or how much are you paying per difference in mileage, and the rule of thumb is you're paying less than $1 a mile for it to be a better deal to add the mileage. So in other words, if car A has 10,000 miles, car B has 16,000 miles, and it is costing you less than $1 a mile to basically buy the lower mileage car, then buy that one. Don't allow yourself to basically fall victim to car B with more miles being a better deal because the price is lower. So you found the car, you found these tools, you negotiated the best 3 deals on the market, and now you're looking at 3 specific deals. And it's important to understand that, because instead of deleting the deals once you identify the deals, you're basically going to identify them in order. You're going to say this is deal A, maybe deal C is the better one after, and then B. So it's not A, B, C, because maybe deal C is better than B. But here's what happens. Once you've done these things, remember, no 2 cars are created equal, so comes the 4th step. This is what we call the inspection process. Most people skip this process because it's tedious, it takes time, and most dealers are against it. Now, I wonder why a dealer would be against the fact that you want to do an inspection on a car. They're not hiding anything, or they wouldn't be worried they might find something, would they now? Because dealers are the most trusted sources of human beings on the planet. So if you don't get sarcasm by that. So inspections are important because they protect you as a consumer against what you're buying or the story you're being told. I've had dealers literally tell me flat out that cars are perfect, they had them inspected. I took the car down the street to get inspected, and the same inspector that was looking at my car told me they just told that dealer a week ago that the car was completely messed up, and the dealer chose to ignore the repairs and basically tell him it was too much some idiot would buy. By doing this inspection, prevented myself from being this idiot because I was able to now understand everything wrong with the car. So inspections are multiple folds. These are also referred to as PPI. Now, inspection process is really important because it allows you to look at 4 facades of the car. The outside facade, which is the car itself, the paintwork, is it in good shape? Does it have PPF film? Is there damage anywhere? Has it been an accident? The inside, which is all the interior, does it have any tears, any sticky buttons if it's a Ferrari or Lamborghini? Are there any issues internally? Are the stereo working, or any of the buttons working, the lift works, and so on and so forth? And then it goes to the more mechanical aspect of it, such as like what is happening with the car. Now, meaning like, is it leaking anywhere? Is the undercarriage coming off? Are they looking for shock leaks, valve cover leaks? Are they looking for oil pan leaks? These are the things that the inspection will look at and cover should you get the right inspector. Now, if you're part of Exotic Car Hacks, again, I recommend that you go under our resource tab, and we have a whole list of all the inspection stations across the United States, regardless of where you live, that you can use in order to make sure this process goes a lot smoother than you having to figure everything out. Now, this inspection process matters because the final stage of it is going to basically be your history. Like, are there any service records? When was the last service? Do we have any opportunities at all of documented services previously? Do we have a clean Carfax? Is it a Canadian car? Is it a US car? Did it get exported previously? All of these things that could alter the price are basically used during the inspection process to determine that indeed car A, which was our first choice, is the better car. Because if the inspection process comes back with car A needs tires, it has a leak, it needs brakes and so on and so forth, and you're paying $140K and now car C seemed like a better deal, it seemed not as good of a deal as A because it was $145K, but car C at inspection comes up with the perfect, flawless inspection report. Now, if this A car had $6,000, $7,000 in repairs, it's maybe not as good as deal C, which was a much better car. So condition of cars matters often, especially if you're not next to the car, you may not be able to see it. Now, I've bought over 300 plus exotic cars, which many of these are case studies inside Exotic Car Hacks, but these cars that I bought, all of them have been sight unseen. I've even bought a $2 million P1, sight unseen. A lot of these things happen in the car business and people just aren't kind of familiar with it, so they skip these inspections and they hear out from the dealer that the car's perfect, doesn't have any issues, and they go, yeah, that's exactly what I thought, it's gonna be great. And the problem is, once you start driving the car and you don't do the inspection, something breaks, it's very hard to then put 200-300 miles or even 1,000 miles in a car, go back to the dealer and be like, well, it's 3 months later, but there are problems. Because they're like, well, it's not my problem, it's your problem to fix your car because you've been driving it. So certainly a lot of problems may not be obvious because cars don't leak that bad that they're all pissing oil on the floor. Instead, sometimes they're just leaking or seeping from places that where things are going to get worse, but they're not going to be noticeable unless you inspect them. And they're not going to take a toll on your driving journey either, unless you basically go out there and go, hey, it's going to like not work out because something is making a noise or something. But a lot of times in the car business, a lot of these cars have silent issues, meaning issues that are not noticeable, seem normal, but really are brewing little by little, and it is going to get worse. So now you kind of have step 1 to 4, right? And the next step, once you pass inspection, let's say car C was really the correct car to buy based on the inspection, so you're ready to pull the trigger on car C, and so comes this next phase, which is actually purchasing the car. Now, this phase matters a lot because a lot of times people go, well, I've gotten through the hardest phases of the game, which is the concept was simple. All I did is find the car, I got the inspection, this is the right car. But now comes actually purchasing the car. And it gets a little bit tricky here because you have 2 types of purchases, either a dealer, right? And then consumer, which is like your private sellers, right? Now, why does that matter? Because historically, we tend to trust dealers more with a transaction because they're not a complete stranger. We believe they have more to lose. Today, I can tell you from experience that maybe 3 out of 10 dealers basically are committing some kind of fraud or scam in the United States, causing people to lose money. How are they doing that? They're selling back cars? Fine, that's easy to spot. They're selling cars without titles. They're floating money. They're doing things with your money that makes the situation much harder. And yes, absolutely could go to court and do that, but who wants to do that when purchasing a car? Who wants to deal with a situation like CNC Motors in California that was basically extorting people, consigning cars, selling them, and never providing titles, and even creating fake duplicate titles? Like, there's so much craziness going on in the world that you have to be careful on both sides. And of course, consumers stealing your money, never giving you a title are also kind of an issue. So in the purchasing the car really comes down to a couple of things. The first thing is the title. Who has it? Where is it? If there's a payoff, are you going to be able to pay off the bank directly and request them to send you a title, right? If it's a dealer and a title is being handled, do they have a guarantee of title? And more importantly, do they have the actual title in house? Are they borrowing the car? Is it consigned? Are they preventing the payoff? did they take it on trade? All these things are going to determine where is this title, because it's very important. Is it a free and clear title? Meaning, is it a salvage title? Is it a free and clear title? Does it have an issue? And so on and so forth. So this is going to be something that matters, right? Then, like we talked about during the inspection, the history matters. And why that matters is because we want to make sure that the car has clean history. Even though I would say probably 8 out of 10 cars have in the past had paint work or some sort of paint repair, it's not the end of the world. What that tells you and historically is if there's a history of damage, their new car cost comes into effect. If there's no history of damage and the car seems to be clean and doesn't have any noticeable or large issues and has a title with it and everything seems okay, the dealership has a good reputation and has had no issues, you can then proceed with wiring the dealer or reaching out to the dealer, giving them your pre-approval and working with your bank, since you needed, remember at the beginning, we needed your purchasing power, right? I told you then you needed to know your buying power. And the reason you want to do that is because when you're purchasing the car, something interesting happens after you check the title and the history, is you have to make an offer. Now, an offer is binding, but what we call a deposit. A dealer may ask you for a deposit to be placed on the car in order to not sell that car from under you to another interested party. Usually that deposit is non-refundable. So remember at the beginning, we got a buying power thing. The reason that mattered is because when you make an offer and put a deposit on a car, you want to ensure your ability to go through with the transaction and purchase such car, and not then deal with the fact that the bank would only approve you for X, you don't have enough Y, you don't have enough cash, and you don't know how to handle the offer since you've already given a $5,000 or $10,000 deposit. Now you've given that deposit, but now you have confidence in the dollar you made the offer, the confidence in your ability to back it, and confidence that your bank will now work with this offer to just like a home, right? They will work with this offer over the next 2 or 3 days, send the dealership a check, and the dealership will do your title work and then send the title over to your bank to hold it for you, or if you're buying cash, will hand you the title and then offer you to go ahead and manage that yourself, right? If you're buying from a consumer, it really isn't any different. The only difference here, again, when you make the offer is that you want to use something like PayPal, a credit card, or something where you can dispute it in case the consumer isn't as honorable as the dealer and perhaps does sell the car from under you to someone who makes a higher offer later. This is something that happens a lot in today's market when the car market is very hot and people are getting multiple offers from multiple places. So this is kind of the order of how things work. Once the offer is placed and the offer is accepted, then you do your paperwork and you kind of move through that process, and then you schedule basically your shipping. Now, there are many ways to schedule shipping. You can call a shipping company that picks up car directly, like a truck that does this for a living. You can call a broker, an intermediary that schedules through what they call central dispatch and finds it. And in many cases, you can also ask the dealer to provide you with what they're paying. Now, dealers often pay a better rate for shipping simply on the one basis that their rate with the shipping is better because they're doing volume and you're not. And they can also know which truck is already in the area, what truck they can fill and get a better rate than if you call a random truck that would have to travel. Maybe it's in Utah, has to go all the way to Florida, pick a car and bring it for you, or there might be even delays doing that. Once a car is paid for, you have to make sure that the shipping is arranged, and you can choose. Again, you can try the dealer, try a broker, and of course try the actual shipping company itself. But there's a couple of things you need to know when shipping. Do they have the right insurance per car and per load? This is things that people don't know about the business. Like, is the carrier insured for all the cars in their load and per car? Sometimes the carrier might only be insured for $5 million per load. Well, if I give you a $5 million Bugatti to carry for me, that even though it's an 18-wheeler and it can fit 9 cars, that one car will cover the entire load. So none of the other cars will then be insured. But if their insurance per car is only $300,000 and I'm giving them $5 million, again, I'm not insured properly. And while in the best case scenario, nothing happens, in a worst case scenario, a lot can happen, and you could be left cold with no money other than having to file lawsuits against all people. So again, shipping matters, and ensuring that the shipper has the correct insurance per car and per load will make a difference here, right? And then the other thing is you have to understand that there's a cost for the shipping. Typically, coast to coast, it's about $2,500, and that is okay, but again, you're gonna have to select a good shipper that has good timelines and so on and so forth. And then there's only one thing left to do, which is what most people tend not to do until this very moment comes in, which is the final step. And you're ready for this? Enjoy your car. And once the car is actually shipped to you, You receive it, it should have a temp tag on if it was bought from a dealer. Otherwise, you should have paperwork to go to the DMV and get your temp tag. And then you have to insure your car at the time it is picked up for shipping, which means you typically refer to one of the 4 preferred insurance companies we have in our resource pages for exotics. They'll give you a rate as low as many cases, like my Ford GT cost me $600 a year. My P1 cost me about $900 a year in insurance. It's really not that much. It's very affordable, especially if you follow the strategies we teach you in Exotic Car Hacks. But the best and most satisfying part of this process, of course, receiving the car and enjoying it. You have to just ensure a couple of things as you take on your first exotic car experience ownership. I typically look at exotic cars as investment. For those of you that know me and my platform, Exotic Car Hacks, I teach people how to basically get in and out of cars without losing any money. That also means that you have to pay attention to how you are protecting your investment. And I don't mean paint protection film or PPF or any type of ceramic coating or anything. These are things you can do to protect the paint and protect yourself from having rock chips and issues. The real problem or risk factor of owning an exotic is new car ownership, which means very passive car ownership without paying attention to the car itself, and basically making the basic mistake of positioning yourself to drive your car places you shouldn't. I typically have a good rule of thumb with the car. If you're driving around in an R8 like we discussed earlier, you're basically driving around in what we consider to be about a $200,000 car, which means that to an average person on the road, you are technically walking the streets with a suitcase that is transparent with $200,000 in it. Now the question is, would you be in certain neighborhoods with that briefcase? Would you leave that briefcase parked very tightly between 2 cars where you couldn't keep an eye on it or where no security footage was? Would you hand that briefcase to a valet to basically secure for you, even though they could open it and take all the money and run? Would you trust them with that suitcase if you had never met them or knew where they were going to keep that case? So this is the core of exotic car ownership. You have to understand that the same as that transparent suitcase goes, the same goes for your car. Don't hand your keys to a valet that doesn't know how to operate your car. Don't hand your keys to a valet where you don't know where they're going to park it. If you're going to go in a questionable neighborhood with heavy speed bumps or with bad weather or somewhere where things are going to give you a significantly larger chance of being damaged or creating a problem, would you take your car there? And the answer should always be no, unless you can afford to. You see, some of us can afford to have $300,000 mistakes, some of us can afford to have $5,000 mistakes, and others can afford to have $80,000 mistakes. Whoever you are in that pool makes no difference. Whatever you can afford to do, that should be your risk tolerance for how you partake and take care of your exotic car. So this has been my description basically of understanding how the purchasing worked on your very first exotic car, and hope you found this very informational and learned something new today. Of course, for more content like this, please like, turn on subscriptions, turn on notifications, and of course comment below. Was there a section I left out that you really wanted to hear more about? I'm certain to do a video in the future. So I'll catch you in the next video for Exotic Car Hacks.